We're going to focus on the 9 tips for how to improve your aim within Modern Warfare. If you find any of the tips helpful, let me know by hitting that like button. If you're brand new to the channel or just haven't yet subscribed, definitely consider subscribing if you find any of the content helpful. So the first thing we're going to look at is your overall sensitivity and your aim assist that is going to be ideal for you. There's a couple different things you're going to want to pay attention to. First off, when it comes to the overall sensitivity, you're going to want to make sure that you're picking something that works for you. Obviously, we reviewed a couple different people that play at a high level. There's people that play on max sense, so that's 20/20. And then there's people that play on a 12/12. There's people that play on a 4/4. And all the different people can be very successful because you learn how to play with that specific play style and making sure that you're as accurate as possible. Kind of have a tutorial on the channel if you're interested in finding how to find the right sensitivity. But for the most part, most people are going to be between 4 and 8. On top of that, you're wanting to lower your ADS sensitivity. I ended up bumping mine down to 7.5x because I ended up just sticking with what I had in BO4. So a lot of these just carried over. Even though the overall sensitivities have changed slightly because it's on a high scale of 20, we're gonna still choose what's kind of comfortable, and you make your adjustments based off finding the right sensitivity for you. So in this particular case, I go 0.75. There's some people that keep it at 1, and there's some people that keep it at 0.9. But the perfect thing to do is to make sure that you have the right one for you, and that's through trial and error and playtime. So what you're trying to do is be as accurate as possible where you're not missing shots. Once you understand the concepts that are within the video, and that's basically the 8 other tips. Obviously, finding the right sensitivity is crucial. That's important. Same thing with mouse and keyboard. You got to find the right sensitivity for you, because obviously if it's too fast, you're gonna be missing. Doing 720s instead of 180s. You gotta obviously figure out the right settings for yourself as well. So when it comes to sensitivity, personally I like standard. Some people go with precision, some people go focusing, and some people even disable it. Personally, I think standard is just the way to go. Unless you're just sniping all the time, precision and focusing might be better ways to go. For the most part, I think for the general people watching this video, standard is the ideal option. Also, when it comes to the aim response curve, standard is a good option. Obviously, people swear by dynamic. Personally, I don't like it, but there are people that do like it out there. So you kind of just got to experiment, go through standard and dynamic, see which one's better for you, and see which one you could be more accurate with. So the next part of improving your aim is understanding the weapon's recoil, and each weapon is going to have a different recoil from each other. And once you start stacking with attachments, that recoil will slightly change based off those individual attachments. So right here, if I just aim at this wall, and you can see on the controller I have on screen, that's made it a little bit easier for you to see what I'm doing. I'm not going to touch that right analog stick. I'm just going to aim down sight, and then I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger. What I'm going to do is aim probably for this line right here. You can kind of see the line, and that's where all the start of my shots are going to start. And then I'm just going to hold the trigger until the 30 rounds are gone. So pretty much I'm lined up there. Not going to hold the right analog anymore. Pull the trigger, and you can kind of see the recoil of the weapon. It goes slightly up a little bit and then kind of cuts diagonally to the right. What you're going to look for is if I do the exact same thing, if I aim right here, pretty much at that line, let go of that right analog stick, line it up with that line, pull the trigger, and it's pretty much going to do the same thing. It kind of went up and it went to the right. So pretty much what you got to understand about that is that each weapon's recoil pattern is unique to that weapon. If we use the RAM, for example, it'll go up and then it kind of goes to the left. So it's kind of the opposite of the M4. And that's why it's important to understand the recoil pattern so you know how to adjust for it. So the next tip that's going to play into this is understanding which attachments do what. So when it comes to understanding the specific attachments for the weapon, there's various attachment descriptions, and you got to understand what those are before equipping them so you know how they're actually helping. So when it comes to the specific for the underbarrel, we can go through this one because it has all of them for the most part. So right here for the Commando foregrip, it says recoil stabilization, and then it says aiming stability. So anytime you get stabilization, it means your horizontal or left and right recoil. When it comes to stability, that's what happens to your weapon while you're aiming down sight. So right here, if I'm aiming, you can see there's a little bit of movement. If I'm lined up directly on the line, you can see there is just a little bit of the body moving. And normally a lot of times you would time your shots in real life based off your breathing, right? But the weapon's just naturally going to move because when you're standing, it has a little bit of movement. So when it comes to this specific attachment here, if I wanted to reduce the horizontal recoil, I would just go with the stabilization. But if I don't really have a trouble controlling that stabilization, I can actually work on the vertical, which is the recoil control. So if I go down to the Merc, it's going to do recoil control. So it should reduce that recoil control. Obviously, if you go down here, you're going to have the tactical foregrip only works on aiming stability. So it's going to reduce that idle sway that you see. When we go to the bipod, crouch or prone recoil control. And then we got the ranger foregrip. And then we also have the operator foregrip. A lot of these are recoil control. And sometimes what ends up happening is it's important to stack certain attachments. So one example of that is if you use a compensator, and then maybe I go ahead and use the commando foregrip, I'm getting recoil stabilization and recoil control. So that combination is going to help. Same line now with 2 attachments, and then you're going to see how they combine together. So that's why it's important to actually test your attachments out, because you might read it one way and it doesn't actually do much. So right here, you can see vertically it was 2 bricks lower, and then horizontally it's about a half a brick less. So pretty much if I want to control that recoil, now we can go ahead and get into the other tactics specifically for that. So one side note in addition to this, that's another tip, is if you're going to use stopping power, what will end up happening is it actually increases your recoil significantly. So unless you're dealing with a typically low recoil weapon, I probably wouldn't use stopping power for the most part, just in general, because sometimes the trade-off is just not worth it unless you're in close quarters where you're not likely to miss those shots. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot the wall again. So that could be the baseline. And then what we'll do is take a look at how it is when we actually factor in the 2 other methods to reduce the recoil. So right here, just pull the trigger, it's gonna go up and then cuts to the right. Normally, you're not gonna even do that in a gunfight. That's why the M4 is so good, because you get like 15, 18 bullets in before it actually starts curving to the right. So a lot of times if you just pull down, you're gonna be good, right? First method in controlling recoil is to do controlled burst. So that means maybe you're firing 5 bullets, 10 bullets at a time, releasing the trigger, and since this has a predictive recoil pattern, it's gonna start the recoil from back to 0 and end up at the first bullet. So what that means is basically if this was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way to 30, pretty much each of those is assigned that specific order. When you let go of the trigger and pull the trigger again, it starts back at 1 every single time. So if I were to just aim at this wall right here and I pull the trigger, let go, it resets, pull the trigger, resets, pull the trigger, and resets and pull the trigger. So as you saw, I went through 4 bursts there, each one about 7, 8 bullets, and you end up with a recoil pattern that only goes to there, and it reset every time. Pretty much went to the same line. If you look back, you can watch it over. Look at my hands on the controller. I'm doing nothing with the recoil. It's literally resetting itself. So that is the next tip right there. You got to be able to burst your fire and control the recoil that way, in addition to actually controlling the recoil. So now we're going to talk about countering that recoil. So if I were to just pull the trigger the entire way, I would know that about 15, 18 bullets right when it gets to about this line, then I'd have to pull diagonal to the left to counter it, and I would still be accurate, and I should be able to hit everything in one shot. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and pull down, and I'm pulling down, and then as soon as it goes that way, I start pulling to the left. And you can see it's not perfect. Obviously, you got to kind of practice at it. And this was just like a first dry run. Most of the bullets kind of all in this area. So now, if I only want to worry about the down, what I can do is do the same technique and only pull down, release after about 15 bullets, and then pull down continuously, and then keep doing the exact same thing. So I'm combining those 2 methods. So that burst firing, obviously you're not going to burst 2 bullets. You're going to burst like 10, 15, make sure the target's dead. Depending how far it is away, it might be a little bit harder to hit those shots. So you're going to fire whatever you need to fire. And then once that target's done, you can release the trigger, work on the next target. So right here, if I go ahead and pull the trigger, let go, pull the trigger, let go, you can see it's still a little bit tighter. Obviously, I let it go up a little bit, but it's one of those things that you practice over time. So pretty much what you see right here is the next tip, which is to center. Obviously, some people call this crosshair placement or whatever, but at the end of the day, it's where do you put this little dot on your screen in relation to where an enemy is going to be. So for example, if I'm going to run through this area and I'm expecting the person to be in this doorway here, this little walkway, what I would do is have my crosshairs there. And what you'll see is a lot of times people come around and see where my crosshairs are. They're not necessarily in the right spot. So when you're walking around, you should be consciously aiming, and then it becomes a habit where you actually put your crosshairs over time. When you go, okay, let me make sure my crosshairs in the right spot, you should be aiming that crosshair at that center of that opening. So as I come around, I'm already there, right? So if I'm running around, I can run around here and then boom, somebody comes around. You're able to ADS. You don't have to go from here. So if I'm running around and the guy's right there, oh, he just popped around. Let me adjust my aim and then aim down sight, or do a combination of both of them, right? You just aim down sight like that. But if you're already there, what happens is you're already there, right? You're able to just snap on, and by the time you fire the bullet, you should be able to land that first shot. And that's something you should be doing as you move around the map. Pretty much, if my crosshairs, okay, if I think somebody's on the head glitch there, if I come around here, if I'm creeping around, oh, they're in that window. Oh, if I come around, I should be able to slide. Oh, they're up there. And you're kind of guessing where enemies are going to be. Obviously, within this game, there's certain head glitch where people will be. Oh, boom. Oh, you know, you're already snapped onto those areas. So the next tip in regards to accuracy and hitting your shots more consistently and snapping on targets is basically snapping onto targets. So this is typically important, combining what I just said now with multiple targets. So an example of that is if I come around and I see these two targets, right? This one right here, this green one, and this one on the left. What ends up happening is obviously I want to focus on whichever one is the bigger threat. So if this guy right here is looking that way, he's not a threat. This guy looking directly at me, I'm going to focus on him first, because if I get this kill, by the time this guy turns around, I should be able to finish him off and then snap on over here. If the distance is this close, you probably just drag your crosshairs like this, not that far, right? So I'll just go boom, 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 all right, boom. And that's it. I didn't need to un-ADS. But when your targets are maybe over here and over here, this is a little slow. Like, it looks kind of fast, but it's not as fast as, right? Obviously, the aim assist would probably slow it down a little bit. But if I go, I'm going to get those shots, right? Get all these things a habit. So the last part you want to focus on is actually practicing these various things. Warm up, you shoot at the wall, all that type of stuff. Figure out the recoil pattern, mess around with the attachments. And then you jump into a custom match with bots, put them on recruit, give everyone 200 health or whatever the case is. And then you just focus on making sure that you know where the targets are. You put on the mini, oh, I got 200 health on. Feels a little bit weird. So you just go ahead and see how many people you can kill with your ammo. In this particular case, if I go ahead and come around, my snapping onto targets, and I can hit my shots, right? So in this particular case, what I'll do is run around. There's no time. There's a 10-minute time limit, and I'm just going for kills. Snap on the target. That was a bigger threat. Come through, center across, center chest, jump around, know where the guy's at. So with all the various different tips, it's just going to take time. Obviously, if I was missing a ton of shots here, I would know that, hey, you know what? My sensitivity's off. When it comes to regular health, once I jump into a regular lobby, it's going to be like, damn, that is ridiculous how quick you can kill somebody. So that's pretty much it. The 9 ways to help improve your aim within Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Hopefully you found the video helpful. If you did, please let me know by hitting that like button. If you're brand new to the channel or haven't yet subscribed, definitely consider subscribing for more tips and tricks to improve at Call of Duty. Appreciate all the support on the channel. Thank you for watching. As always, have a great day.